So great. Thank you all for putting your information in the chat. It's wonderful to see where everyone is sort of coming in from in the West River watershed. This is a very big watershed, so it's nice to see representation from the headwaters all the way down to its mouth. So again, for those of you that are just joining us, my name is Margot, and I work with Windham Regional Commission. We are one of the organizations that are working with Marie Caduto from the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation on a process known as tactical basin planning. And along with Windham Regional, we also, I think I saw Corey from the Natural Resources Conservation District. They also have a tactical basin planning grant that allows their organization as well as ours to be working deeply with Marie in issues facing our watersheds throughout the region. So tonight's focus, as we talked about, is going to focus specifically on the West River watershed, which is part of a bigger basin that is undergoing a planning process right now. So without further ado, I'm going to pass this over to our host speaker tonight, Marie Caduto, who's our basin planner from the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation.
Thanks, Margot, and hi, everyone. It's great to see a bunch of familiar faces and a bunch of new faces. Thanks for joining in tonight. I much appreciate it. Your feedback is what I'm looking for on this, so I'm grateful for you coming in on this. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully this will go smoothly. And I will say that Margot is also our scribe for the evening. So if she needs to get something clear, or so she may break in and ask questions if the note-taking goes awry, which is a good thing that I'm not doing it because it usually does. So I'm going to jump right in, and I am what's called the Watershed Coordinator with the Department of Environmental Conservation, and I cover the southeastern portion of the state. And this is the beginning of the outreach for the West Williams and Saxtons Rivers watersheds, which and the Connecticut River, by the way. I'll show you that. Maybe. There we go. So basin planning is a process that happens throughout the state. It's required by the Vermont legislature and by EPA. And we have 15 basins around the state. There are 5 of us doing this. And we rotate through those basins every 5 years. So we are doing I am doing the West Williams Saxtons now. I cover this whole section of the state that drains to the Connecticut River. And again, we focus on these on a rotating basis. And we do that, it's a 5-year process to create one of these plans. And it starts off with our field scientists going out and doing monitoring of bugs and fish and water quality sampling, and a lot of other parameters that they look at. And that takes about a year for that process to happen. And they get lots and lots of raw data. And then the assessment team steps in and they take that raw data and they process it into something that's more consumable, which are a lot of the maps that you're going to see tonight. And then the planners come in and start working with all that information to take the data and synthesize it and try to figure out what it actually means for the watershed. And then we work with you all and lots of partners throughout the whole area to find out what the goals are. What do you want these waters to look like and to be used for? So what are the goals and how do we get there? What are the strategies, actions that we can put into place to make those, to accomplish those goals? And the key thing is that we have in Vermont now a significant amount of clean water funding to implement practices on the landscape. And for that to happen, for a project to happen, it needs to be addressed in a tactical basin plan and be put into this large database of water quality projects. So getting your input and making sure that this plan covers what you want to be done in the watershed over the next 5 years is really important, because that's going to point the funding to the projects that you want done. We do it by these 5 land use sectors. So we address agricultural issues, certainly urban and developed land stormwater issues, roads, road erosion, road issues that are impacting water quality. We have to address wastewater issues, wastewater treatment facilities, but the bulk of our work still kind of remains in the natural resource restoration area. So we do lots of that part. And this part, as Margot said, is focused on the West River out of all the others that we cover. So this is the entire basin. It covers about 700 square miles, and there's 29 towns in full or in part in the basin. It's a fairly steep watershed. It covers from Stratton Mountain up here down to the retreat meadows down at the bottom. It drops 3,700 feet in the watershed. So it's pretty significant. And we also cover the Connecticut River main stem, basically from Herrick's Cove in Rockingham down to the retreat meadows. So in this plan, you'll find that we also cover the main stem of the Connecticut. So this part is the West River. It's the largest piece of the watershed, 423 of those 700 square miles. And as I'm sure you probably know, it starts up in Mount Holly, actually, and Weston, the main stem running down through Londonderry, Jamaica, Newfane, Dummerston, Brattleboro, and then there's significant tributaries off of that. The Rock River, the Winhull River, Wardsboro Brook. So it's a good sized watershed. What we know about the watershed from that monitoring work that's done, we test bugs and fish. So the macroinvertebrates that live in the water, in the rivers and streams, are one of our main indicators of water quality. As well as the fish community. So we monitor what's going on with both of those and put those together, and we look at the biological monitoring. All the green and yellows are good water quality, and the oranges and reds are not so good water quality, or as far as biological factors go. So you can see that the majority of this basin is actually in good to excellent condition. And what that means is it supports the designated uses, which is an EPA term, of swimming, boating, fishing, aquatic biota, habitat, aesthetics, and drinking water supply. And that doesn't mean that you can go to anywhere within the watershed and drink a cup of West River water. It means that the water is usable for water supply with treatment. I always have to make that caveat. This data, what this map is compiled of, is modeling data. We have points throughout the watershed where we do monitor the bugs and the fish. And then that data combined with US Forest Service and USGS data is modeled to produce this map. But you can see it does make sense. Up where, Stratton Mountain, lots of ski area development. Down in Brattleboro, some out in Bellows Falls. The areas that are more developed tend to be more red. And that's to be expected. One of the things that protects the water quality in this basin is the amount of forest cover that we have. So the pale green is private forest lands and the dark green is public forest lands. And the gold is current use properties. So when you add all that up, there is a lot of forest cover. Forests are our best water quality protection. They infiltrate and filter the water that comes down. They store it for release later on when things get drier. So the amount of forest land in this basin is 89%, which is fantastic. And then that's a lot of the reason that we have such good water here. And those good waters can be reflected in one of the tasks of the basin plan is to make recommendations for reclassification of our waters. We have A1, A2, B1, and B2 waters. The natural ones, A2 is something different, so I won't go into that. But we are in the West River watershed, there are already some that have been reclassified to A1, which is our highest level of protection, our best, most pristine water quality. So Mount Tabor Brook, which is up here, and the Winhall River, the headwaters of the Winhall River are already A1s because we've worked with the Forest Service. Those are mostly on Forest Service land to reclassify those already. But our data shows that all these other ones, the Upper West, Burnt Meadow, Eddy Brook, Cobb Brook, and all the ones at the bottom are reaching the water quality information here for either A1 or B1 levels. And this is a public process. This isn't something that happens overnight. So we'll work with our partners and anyone interested to petition for those. This has to go through the legislature and have a public process so people can hear it and learn what all this means. But we have some great waters and really good candidates in the West River for reclassifying to higher levels of protection. And what that does is protect them from future degradation. We want our high quality waters to stay that way. There are, of course, some challenges in the watershed as well. These are the dams that we know about, and there are lots and lots of dams that we don't know about. So anything that's red or yellow is a dam that's large enough, or were the dam to fail from one thing or another, it means there was likely to be life, property, infrastructure damage if that dam goes out. So the dams that are of concern certainly are the bigger ones. You know, I'm going to try to read these. Certainly Ball Mountain and Townsend dams, obviously Lowell Lake, and some of the others are actually, all these others that are significant or high hazard potential, except for the Chester Reservoir, are in the West River watershed. It's got a lot of dams. And dam removal certainly is a high priority for the basin plan. Dams do a lot of have a lot of ecological impacts, as well as they block fish passage, they block sediment passage. So taking those out is certainly a priority where landowners are willing to do that. There we go. So if you're in a town that's blank on this screen, these are road erosion inventories that towns are supposed to complete by 2 days ago. I know some of these towns have actually done the work and it just hasn't gotten processed and into the mapping database yet. But these are new requirements, or fairly new. They've actually been out for quite some time now and are being implemented. And this again helps target where the state invests money for municipalities to decrease the road erosion, road hazards that are impacting water quality. So as Margot, you can talk to Margot about these. The regional planning commissions tend to be the ones who are managing these for municipalities. So we do have some work to do on getting these completed, and that's a high priority for the basin plans because this directs that money, and we certainly want municipalities to be able to take advantage of that money. Oh, there we go. And there are When a water does not meet the Vermont water quality standards, it's called an impaired water. And we certainly have a number of those in the watershed. We have more that we term stressed waters. And what that means is they have not, those waters are having impacts, they're not in great shape, but they haven't crossed the criteria line into being impaired. So it's important within the basin plan. We are required to address impaired waters and do things to fix them. And we want to work on the stressed waters so they don't become impaired. When we get to the impaired category, that's what you hear all about Lake Champlain and what's called a TMDL, total maximum daily load, and all the things that are being imposed on Lake Champlain. We don't want to go there if we don't have to. All the stressed waters, the ones in orange on this list, are stressed. The redder ones and the yellow ones are already impaired, and we need to be working on those. And this is what that looks like. I tried to just block out the ones that weren't the West River. So we have a number of lakes that are impaired for acid rain, and there's not a whole lot we can do about that. But they are feeling those impacts, which is actually getting better over time. A number that are flow impaired, like Hapgood Pond, if you don't know that, they drain it every winter and then they fill it back up in spring and they drain it, and needless to say, that's not great for the habitat and the aquatic organisms there. There's some, like Gale Meadows has your invasive Eurasian milfoil. So there are a number of different issues within the watershed. And as I said, we are required to address these impaired waters. So any projects that we can come up with to decrease these impacts, we'll be trying to implement through the basin plan. We do have one of those wonderful TMDLs here on the Connecticut River side of the state. And it's actually the very same problem as they face on Lake Champlain. It's a nutrient issue. On this side of the state, the nutrient of concern is nitrogen. And on that side of the state, it's phosphorus, just because of where the water ends up. And these maps are, again, modeled data from the state and the feds to look at what the sources of nitrogen are within the basin. And do note that these scales are different from each other. So, you know, this is the smallest scale, but I found it interesting and did not know until I started diving into this data that septic issues are actually a significant source of nitrogen in the West River. So we'll be trying to figure out how to deal with that with outreach and with municipalities to figure out. I mean, a lot of our old villages are built right on the river, and small village lots and old systems. So there are, we're gonna have to be trying to figure this out. This is not gonna be an easy one to address. And it's gonna be interesting to dive into. And I wanna give a shout out to the Southeastern Vermont Watershed Alliance, which has been in existence for a very long time and has a crew of amazing volunteers who sample the entire basin all summer long and have been doing it forever and provide the state with really invaluable data on the water quality of the region. So we incorporate this data into our data, and that helps create all these maps. So it's a really important program and a really important piece of the information that we have on this watershed, which we otherwise would not know. So I just want to give them credit for all the work that they do. Another type of assessment that we do are geomorphic assessments, which means on all these highlighted rivers, someone has gone out there and walked every piece of that. to look at what the geology and how the land and the water play together, and whether or not they're getting along. The red and the oranges is the not doing so well together. The yellow and the green, which you don't really see green on this map. I guess there's a little spot of it down here. And a lot of this, granted, is due to the impacts of Tropical Storm Irene and how much erosion and landslides and damage to our riverbanks and riverbeds that storm did. So we have lots and lots of projects in our database now to work on those issues. And that certainly creates habitat impacts when there's lots of erosion and sediment in the water. With Margot, we're also looking at doing a stream geomorphic assessment for the Upper West River. So we're hoping we'll be able to next season cover a lot of this territory with these assessments as well, which would be really good. We need that information. Oh my goodness, my maps are gone. So we also do stormwater mapping. So all these towns have had DEC staff come out and open up every storm drain and look down it and say, this one connects to that one, connects to the other one, and it comes out into the West River over here. And to follow up on that, someone has gone out and tested what is coming out of that stormwater pipe. And when we find pollutants in that water, we trace it back up the pipe to see if we can't find the source and address that problem. So each of the towns listed here have a stormwater map with all those stormwater systems laid out, and a list of projects where stormwater treatment can be put in, or there's issues with a pollutant in a particular location. So these projects are also getting put into the Watershed Projects database for us to be able to address over time. And all those watershed projects are in this database, and you can actually look at them and find out where they are by going to the Clean Water Project Explorer, which is an interactive map of all the projects we have that have a GPS point in some way with an actual location. And this is what it looks like. So you can pull up and you'll find that all the projects that we know about have a droplet. And if you click on the droplet, it will pull up the project and tell you exactly what it is. So it's one of the things that the RPCs and the Conservation District and the watershed groups that we partner with are all working on and trying to help us implement these projects as we go forward. So if one of these dots happens to be on your land, we'd love to hear from you, because we only do these projects with willing landowners and willing municipalities. These don't get forced on anybody, but we have really good funding to make improvements to our river banks and our stormwater systems to improve water quality. So if there's something that you can help out with by offering us or allowing us to do a project in your area, that would be amazingly helpful. And we have done some successful projects. We do these plans every 5 years. This is actually the third time I rotate through to Basin 11. The last one was in 2015 and offered 68 different actions, 75% of which have been undertaken in some way, shape, or form. These are two examples. The one on the left is Adams Brook, which is a tributary to the Rock River. And this road had collapsed during Irene, and they made an attempt to do some work that really didn't work. So we had to, this is the Irene fix that we had to unfix and turn it back into an active stream channel. And this, if you're from Weston, you're familiar with this site. This is the Cold Spring Brook Park. And this dam collapsed during Irene and actually just summer of 2019. The work got done to remove all that, restore the channel, create the, the park atmosphere there. One of the dam removals that came out really, really well. And we worked with the community, the Weston community on that one, which was a great project. So the monitoring's done, the assessment's done, and I am here to hear from you basically about what you would like to have in the basin plan, what your questions are, where you would like the plan to go from here. And I'm glad to talk to you now, but if you're not comfortable with that, please contact me directly through email or contact Margot or Corey, and they can pass your thoughts and concerns and comments on to me. I'd love to.
I do have a question. I have sent you a package of information of our input.
Yes. And I got that, Armand, and I turned it into a PDF and tried to post it in the chat, but I can't figure out how to do that. So and
as you see, I'm also having technical problems joining this system. I do have a camera now and things. Eventually it may work, but so those things take time. But what I like to do is to share that input with the participants, and then basically what you see, we need to develop like mapping of the dump sites, and then to add that to the existing system as it is. And I explained the reasons why that's needed, how that is different from the Lake Champlain model that I talked about. And so we need an addition to what you're doing, which we appreciate so much. And I really want to thank you for pursuing that Adams Brook project through all this scarcity for a while of funds. That was what, $2 million to get that done? Awesome. I'm glad you protected that. It was very needed. Because of the limits that I have with this system right now, it'd be nice if Rock River Science could get a list of the participants, and then I can do emails and things like that and proceed from there to develop our own a regional awareness of how our challenges are different from the Lake Champlain challenges. So of course, up north, they also have inland river problems. So, it's not like a black and white thing, but I think we are more characterized by the inland river problems, which need to be added to this whole already funded type of system of checking the waters. So that's what I had to say.
Thanks, Armand. And as I said, I have those, and I will use those as part of the public input comments.
I really appreciate that. I would like to hear from everyone because I want everybody to start looking out and give us info to develop that notion. Thank you.
So Armand, this is Margot, and I just wanted to let you know that I don't have permission to share everyone's contact information ahead of time. So what I did do is I put your contact information in the chat. So I'll let everybody now know that if you are interested in connecting with Armand about the issues that he just spoke with and with Rock River Science that he represents, please see the chat and you can get his email from there.
And you can also go to our website, rockriverscience.org, and contact us through there. Thank you, Margot.
So I also wanted to mention, Marie mentioned in her presentation that the Southeastern Vermont Watershed Alliance, SEVWA, is very active in the West River watershed, as well as some of the other watersheds in southeastern Vermont. And I believe Ryan, I'm going to put Ryan on the spot if he's okay with it. Ryan O'Donnell is the watershed monitoring coordinator for the Southeastern Vermont Watershed Alliance, as well as for the Connecticut River Conservancy. And Ryan, I'm wondering if you could just speak for a minute or two about the work that you all do in the West River watershed.
Yeah, so SEVWA, the Southeastern Vermont Watershed Alliance, monitors as part of the La Rosa Partnership Program the West River watershed, in addition to the Whetstone, Saxtons, Williams, Sackett's, and who knows what else in the future, our expanding empire. And so volunteers go out and they collect samples for, in the past it's been E. coli, nitrogen, phosphorus, turbidity, conductivity, you know, a bunch of different things. We work very closely with Marie in selecting those sites so that we know that it's data that she wants. We follow strict quality control parameters. You know, it's processed at following, you know, appropriate procedures, and so that data is scientifically sound and available to everyone at the state to help make these decisions. And in addition to helping Marie, one of our other goals too is to monitor swimming areas and getting that data out there so that people have an idea of where it's a good idea to swim, and if you need to wait after it rains, or maybe you shouldn't swim there, stuff like that.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. So we have quite a few partners that do work in the West River. So again, the Southeastern Vermont Watershed Alliance, I believe Stuart, I think I saw him on this call today. He's on the board. And then Ryan is the water quality coordinator for them. We also have, oh, Gloria is also on here from SEVWA. We also, some of the partners that Marie mentioned that work on water quality projects along the river include Wyndham Regional, as well as Corey from the Conservation District and the Connecticut River Conservancy, and as well as SEVWA. So there's quite a few organizations that partner together, and each of the different groups, oh, and Rock River Science, I should mention, from Albert, that partner together to work on the different projects that you notice. So any one of us can assist you if you do have questions or want certain projects. So there are a couple questions that have come up in the chat, and I just wanted, well, a couple responses. I noticed that Ryan had put that the Connecticut River Conservancy has a map of reported trash sites in the Connecticut River watershed. So if you are interested in seeing sites that have already been reported, you can visit the Connecticut River Conservancy page and find the map of reported sites. Ryan, is there also a reporting tool there?
Yeah, so that's part of our source to see cleanup, is we ask people to submit sites that we know are dumps of any size, even big ones that you don't think a volunteer group could clean up if you need heavy equipment or something. You know, we tackle those sites slowly. We got that big oil tank out of the river with Marie. So if you if you know of a site that there's a dump, like we would definitely be happy to use that tool and to share that information with Marie and partners around the watershed. And I think I don't work on the source to see cleanup, so I don't know all of our data, but I'm pretty sure we keep track of sites that we've cleaned up and anything that's been reported. You know, SEVWA goes out every year, so yeah, if trash is a concern and dumps of various sizes are a concern, that's definitely something we can help figure out, I think.
Great. I noticed that Bob Nasdor, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, Bob.
Yes, you are.
He has his hand raised.
Thank you. Part of the basin planning process, is my understanding, is identifying designated and existing uses. In the presentation, there was some reference to designated uses, but I'm wondering, what is the process through this basin planning process for identifying each of the existing uses?
So, hi Bob, good to see you.
Good to see you again.
So what we have been doing is, these two terms, just for everyone's information, are EPA terms on water quality and water use. Designated uses are the ones that I mentioned earlier. Existing uses are another level where, as long as a use is identified and has been done on that piece of water since November 1975, I believe, is the date, it is a protected use. So even if it's not happening today, if it happened 10 years ago, then it is a protected existing use. We document those now. We kind of keep a running list, so we keep adding to it as time goes on, and that becomes an appendix of the basin plan, so that people can refer to it. So it's all documented for each basin, and so if there's changes to that, every time we redo a plan, we reevaluate that, change things if it's necessary, update it. So that's where they're being compiled and maintained now.
I would hope there would be a process for soliciting public input on those things. If there's boating on the Wells River, for example, those are the types of things that we'd like to see documented as part of that list.
Yes, definitely. So if you want to submit that now,
Sure.
or submit it to us in writing, that would be great, because then we have that documentation to back up our documentation.
I think it's important because, you know, under the Clean Water Act and Vermont water quality standards, existing uses are protected in the same way as designated uses, and they can be a little more specific. Sometimes, you know, there can be broad categories like boating, but there might be stand-up paddleboarding in a particular place. That's an existing use, so it is important to document those. So thank you.
I fully agree. Thanks.
So Bree, we have a couple other questions that have been coming in through the chat. So this question is from someone, Bob from Townsend, and he is associated with the Planning Commission. And the question is, on at least 2 occasions in the early 90s, there have been massive silt releases from the Army Corps of Engineers Ball Mountain Dam into the West River. And over the years, the silt has choked the river aquatic life and moved slowly downstream. Irene brought most of it into the Townsend Lake impoundment. Is there any Army Corps of Engineer plan to address or remediate the damage? Silt flow is a normal, natural event, and what was done from Ball Mountain Dam was anything but natural.
So that is the issues at Townsend Reservoir are actually what prompted us to start working on doing a stream geomorphic assessment of the upper West River. Because there's so much sediment moving in that system, certainly it's always been there, but absolutely exacerbated by Irene and all the stream bank damage that was caused through that event. So we're aware of it, Army Corps is aware of it, and we're trying to start addressing it. And what we'd like to, well, what we've discussed with Margot and the Regional Planning Commission and actually CRC as well, and TU, to initiate the stream geomorphic assessment, hopefully next summer, create a list, document where the issues are, what can be done. I mean, obviously, if you know what Hunter Brook is up there, there's nothing we can do with Hunter Brook. I mean, the scale is so massive of the erosion and the bank failures there that we really can't.
We are very familiar. Yes.
Yeah,
And it is an impossible place, a massive, very interesting tributary, yields a lot of geological samples, very rich indeed, but leave it alone. Yes.
Leave it alone. I like that philosophy. But there are sites that we could be working on and trying to address. So that's kind of the kickoff for that whole issue. And I will be working, you know, to bring the Army Corps into that process. They're fully aware that their dams are part of the problem with sediment transport. So I'm hoping that this, and when we get this documentation, it'll prompt some conversations. I can't say where it might lead, but I'm hopeful that it will start the process of us being able to do some projects up that way.
So Maria, I just wanted to follow up with that quickly because we did have an initial meeting of a few partners this summer, I think it was, that was leading towards the first step being the geomorphic assessment. One of the second things that we identified as that we need to do is pull together a meeting of complete partners. So that includes the towns, Green Mountain National Forest, the Army Corps. So we need to have a full plate of partners because it's a broad issue that is going to take everybody having conversations together for us to be able to address. So in 2021, there will be more meetings, and we will make sure that all of our towns along that stretch of the West River are notified so that they can participate. So we have another question in the chat, but before that, Gloria, I noticed you've had your hand raised.
I think going along with all of the erosion that we see, I'm wondering, Marie, again, and I've said this, I don't know how many times, but what are we doing about the Japanese knotweed that continues to be a major contributor to the stream bank erosion? So is there any place in the plan for that to be addressed? Because that's very, very significant in our, along our riverbanks.
For sure. Yeah, I will address invasives, both aquatic invasives like Gale Meadows, Eurasian milfoil, and what's in the Connecticut River, as well as the knotweed issue.
Okay.
It's unfortunately, as many times as the request has been made for our invasives program funding to cover knotweed, it's still, every time we apply, it hasn't happened. So a number of us within the department are trying to work on that issue and work with funding. Corey, would you like to speak to the SISMA quickly?
Yeah, because
Sure. So a number of organizations in the area have joined together this year to launch a SISMA, which is a Comprehensive Invasive Species Management Association, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it's basically just a partnership between invasive species experts and conservation organizations and concerned citizens that are working to kind of muster our resources and try to raise awareness about invasive species and try to come up with some sort of an action plan. The group's still kind of in its early stages. We have a webinar series that we've been putting on this fall. We have one more webinar coming up next Wednesday, December 9th. And you can find all the information about the SISMA on the Conservation District webpage, which I can put in the chat. But definitely taking on knotweed is something that we are interested in. It's just, as you know, pretty daunting.
So I will put that as an action within the basin plan, both the knotweed issue and the SISMA. Gloria?
Well, just to go on with that, because SEVLA got grant money and we've had a small project that we wanted to really get going, which was adopt a patch and try to get people to adopt a patch to work on their own little section to help control the knotweed. But I agree with what Armand said, and what you say is any and every time we don't get the funding down here. It seems that the southeastern Vermont is neglected. I absolutely understand Lake Champlain, but we, and I've been saying this, what, 10, 12 years, before WOV was started, but we just don't get the money.
Exactly, we do not get the money, and part of it is because our challenge is slightly different from the, phosphorus, nitrate, and bacterial count type of challenge. Like I describe in my writing, the pollution that we find at dump sites is static. It's very hard to detect downstream. You have to actually be at the site and see the stuff that's there and study it. So there are things that need to be addressed, and when we are able to conceptualize our distinct challenge, then we should be able to apply for that in addition to this nitrate and other more effluents that are easier to detect.
Thank you. We do have a couple great questions that have appeared in the chat. So Maria, I'm going to read one of those from David. I noticed that many streams in the West River banks are missing shade trees through many stretches. The Rock River, Wardsboro Brook, and Grassy Brook are three such areas. I believe to manage for cold water fisheries such as brook trout, addressing stream temperature and bank erosion are major priorities to include in the basin plan.
I totally agree. There buffers in the last plan and buffers in this plan will be, a huge priority. They are our best, cheapest water quality protection. And the more we can do to get those in place. And again, Irene didn't do us any favors. A lot of our buffers totally disappeared and turned into knotweed following that. So that is a very high priority. If there are specific locations, and the ones that you mentioned are already on my list, because I'm aware of those areas too. The Upper West River through Weston is one on my list as well. So there are some pretty good stretches that are in desperate need of buffers, and buffers do good things for fish. They do the good things for riverbanks, for water quality, for filtration. So all around, I think like the best practice we can implement. So it is absolutely a top priority in the basin plan.
And I know that SEVLA was trying to do a planting, a buffer planting that had challenges because of COVID. And Stuart has put some information about buffers and work that he's been involved with in the chat, so you guys can check that out. And then Bill Dunkel asks, what regulations, if any, pertain to people who keep farm animals on land, not necessarily a farm, adjacent to a river or stream?
So any operation is supposed to comply with the required ag practices regardless of size. The Agency of Agriculture has rules where farms of specific sizes, they're called large farms, medium farms, and certified small farms, SFOs, certified small farm operations, actually have an inspection schedule through the Agency of Agriculture. So those certified farms get inspected. Small farms that are not of a legal size to fit under those categories are supposed to comply with the required ag practices, but they are not under an inspection schedule. If there's a complaint filed with the Agency of Ag, then an inspector will go out and take a look and see what's going on and work with the farmer on those. But there is no scheduled inspection system on smaller farms. And there's a very odd piece in that legislation that says that really small farms, which I'm thinking you might be trying to address, are regulated now by the town. And that's very, very curious. And I don't quite, if you know more about that, Corey, jump right in, because it's this little piece in the legislation and in the rules, and it's curious. So if there's a concern about a small operation, you can send it through me. You can send it through Corey, who works with the Department of Agriculture on a lot of projects and does farm work. He's probably your best contact for initially. You can go directly to the agency and submit that. And if you feel like it's an environmental violation, the front page of the Agency of Natural Resources website says report an environmental violation. And you can do that with information. You can do that anonymously. And what that triggers is a joint visit from an environmental enforcement officer and often an Agency of Ag staff as well. So, and I'm more than happy to do that on anyone's behalf. So if you want to send information to me and keep it off the record, I'm perfectly happy doing that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because a lot of people aren't necessarily comfortable sort of putting in a formal report to the state, especially if it's a neighbor or someone you know in the community. And I think if you either go to Marie, and Marie can pass it to Corey, or Corey has, from the Conservation District, has put his email contact in the chat, that, you know, sometimes people just don't realize the impact that their small little backyard flock or, you know, couple milkers or something like that is having. And, you know, that's where the Conservation District can go in and just have a conversation. And it's not there's no regulatory aspect associated with going through the Conservation District. It's just, hey, you know, here's some information. We thought you might be interested in learning more. And so that's a great way if you're not comfortable going through that formal reporting process.
May I just ask a quick follow-up? I don't want to take too much time, but is anyone who has a couple of farm animals considered to be, quote, a farm? I mean, if you're not producing any agricultural product, but you're keeping the animals, are you a farm nonetheless, or not? Does that matter?
My understanding is that any operation should be following the required ag practices, even if it's just a couple of cows or 4 horses. Any animal operation is required to comply with water quality rules. And if they are not, even if they only have 3 cows, but they're mucking up the stream, then ag can step in and require fixes for that.
Thank you.
Donna asked a follow-up question. She asked, does this include chickens?
Yes.
I think any animal. I think one of the things that we often notice as partners working on water quality in our region is that sometimes it's the backyard horse owners. They don't consider themselves a farm because they just keep a couple pleasure horses. But they don't necessarily realize that maybe the barnyard or, you know, the run out of the barn or something, or pasture that the horses are in, is affecting water quality. And again, this is where the Conservation District really comes in and can be just a great information source for people, so that people who don't realize that maybe they're, oh, my few horses are a, you know, agricultural, you know, thing, and I can help protect water quality by making a few changes, and people are often really receptive to that. Someone asked if dogs are considered part of this. I laugh, and I shouldn't, because it can be an issue.
Not to my knowledge. They have to be farm animals. And while people look at their horses as pets, they are looked at as farm animals. So, but I would think unless you were running some kind of kennel, that dogs would not come under that heading.
So we have a few minutes left. I'm wondering if anyone has any final questions or comments.
I want to.
Okay. I do want to make a comment, just to keep, for everyone to keep in mind that this whole thing about the affluence is an emerging consciousness. As far as in the 80s, there were still lots of places that just release their, you know, waste right into the river. That's not that far back.
Yeah.
You know, so just wanted to remind people that that was kind of normal around here as early as the 80s. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great reminder, Armand, and that, you know, we have come a long way and are thinking about what kinds of things affect water quality.
I do want to address, I know there are a number of anglers out in this audience, and I just want to let you know that Leigh, who's the fisheries biologist, is in the process of drafting the fisheries section of the basin plan, and she has the comments that you have already submitted, that TU has submitted already. So she's working those into her section already. And she's supposed to have that to me in a couple of weeks. So I will then take her information and incorporate it into the basin plan, and her full section will become an appendix. So all her data will be in there. Just wanted to update you on that.
Are all of the kind of high and mid kind of danger vulnerability dams listed in the kind of DEC database for project work? Or is it basically just as people get interested in them?
It's as people get interested.
Okay.
And if folks aren't aware, as of July, we now have some very different and much more stringent dam rules and regulations for dam owners, where dams now have to be registered and there's an annual fee for that. There have to be engineering inspections. So dam ownership, and it has always been that if a dam fails, the dam owner is liable for the downstream damage. So we are getting, since these rules have gone in, Corey did a great workshop on what the rules are, which is recorded on Corey's website. And it is certainly prompting dam owners of dams that are in really bad shape to come forward, because we have money to assist with dam removals. We don't have money to assist with building dams and rehabbing dams. But if you want to get rid of a dam, we're going to help you. But the dams in the database are just the dams in the database. They are not prioritized in any way for removal unless, I certainly have my priorities for removal and I know which ones should be removed, I think. But unless there's a willing landowner to do that, there's nothing really we can do except through a dam that's in such bad shape that our dam safety engineers say you have to deal with this because it's a safety hazard.
One of the interesting things, Marie, is that, and we found this out when we did a very similar presentation in the Saxons River watershed, that the listing of dams, especially small dams, you know, there was a period of time where a lot of dams were being put in along our smaller rivers for, well, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But not so common now, but there was a period of time, and there's a lot of these little dams that we don't know about. And
And if you are aware of a dam and you're not seeing it on this map, whether it's a private dam or a public dam, we know our database has serious gaps because there are private dams all over the landscape on really small streams that you wouldn't necessarily expect them to be there. But those dams are blocking sediment passage, they're blocking fish passage, they're doing all kinds of, then they actually cause flooding. People think that all dams mitigate flooding, but more than likely they are causing local flooding versus helping it. So the more of those we can get off the landscape, because their purpose is past. You know, they're not used for personal hydroelectric production anymore. They're not used as a recreational swimming hole because they're totally silted in. All of those dams can come out, and it will improve our whole river ecosystem. So if you know of one, let one of us know, and we can at least get it into the database so we know it's there. We can reach out to the landowner and say, hey, this dam's in really bad shape. Would you like some help getting it out of the river?
I noticed that David, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name, David Wien or Wine?
That's fine.
Okay.
So what? One thing that I thought, I mean, when I looked over at the Saxtons and the West and the Williams, I feel like I'm coming from a fish perspective here. I feel like that thermal pollution in the streams is just so pervasive. I thought it would be great if one wanted to persuade towns to be more cognizant of the need for shade and riparian buffers, that if the data could be collected and presented in the plan about thermal exceedances of like a trout's tolerance level, like a brook trout's tolerance level, you know, that might be a very good illustration of the need for that sort of work. If you could show, hey, this stream, Wardsboro Branch or the Rock River, that these places are just hitting 80 degrees and they're way out of the range of a brook trout. If you have that data through thermograph collections, that would be a good way to illustrate why you need to have trees on the banks of these streams. Because I know Hurricane Irene wiped out a lot of trees, but I also know that these places already were missing a lot of trees prior to Hurricane Irene. So it's multiple factors. It's residential development, it's floods, it's many things. Some you can't control, some you can control.
Yeah, I agree, David. And I know Lael has been doing some temperature studies and rotating that around the area. So we have, I think she's gathering more and more of that data. And I agree with you that it is very effective in working with municipalities. I'm working with one in a different basin that when they learned that information and why people weren't coming to their town to go fishing on their beautiful river, when they realized it's because there were no trees, there's no shade, the water's really hot, they actually really wanted to do something about it. So I think you're right, that getting that information, getting the data and then getting that information out is an important step. So I will definitely take that into the plan. Thank you.
Thanks.
So I wanted to just acknowledge that we have officially come to the end of our official presentation time. And I just wanted to thank our presenter, Marie, for joining us this evening to talk about the basin planning process, talk about the West River Watershed, and answer questions. I believe, Marie, you might be able to stay for a few extra minutes if people have additional questions. So if you do have additional questions, just hang in there and we can still get to those. But I just wanted to thank all of you for coming this evening and being able to learn about and share information that you have about the West River Watershed. And if you didn't have a chance to share tonight and still want to share an area of concern or an area that's really special that you feel like should be protected, Please do reach out. I will post again in the chat Marie's contact information. You can reach out to her or one of the partners that are on the presentation this evening. So officially, I just wanted to say thank you all for coming. But Marie is going to stay if anyone has any additional questions.
Thank you for participating tonight. I really appreciate your input.
Thank you for all your work, Marie.
Definitely.
I do
Margaret?
actually have one last question for you. What kind of recourse do we have with the ski resorts in the watershed and helping them to better comply with things that will make better watersheds?
So I mean, we work really actually very closely with Stratton. We have the TMDL process, right, which is enforceable. We have to meet those goals when they're out there. When we have a situation where we know that like one owner, a ski resort, is the owner of the problem area, we can work with them directly, and that's called a water quality remediation plan. And we have a water quality remediation plan with Stratton, and have been working with them for a long time. John Bennett has been involved longer than I have, but they have actually made significant progress on their stormwater issues. And on sedimentation issues, and we have a manganese impairment in their area, which they have been working on. So we have that option as well. The other one in the watershed certainly is Bromley. Haven't worked with them as much. There is an impairment below their facility because of their water withdrawals. So the stream below is impaired for flow. At Magic Mountain, you might know we just removed a dam that was on their property. So we work with the ski areas. It is sometimes regulatory, it is sometimes voluntary. But if there are issues, and we monitor the ski areas actually pretty well. Every stream around Stratton has data. and quite a number. There's not as many around Bromley. So we do monitor those and track it and work with them to make progress on improvements.
Yeah, because I definitely noticed that one of the big red areas up in the upper watershed was around Stratton for the wastewater stuff. And I'm like, oh, well, that's, there are other things that I'd love to bring up with Stratton anyway. So maybe that we could just, cover a bunch of different things.
Sounds good. I thought I saw another hand go up at some point, but maybe not.
Oh, you know what? Oh, sorry.
David?
Yeah, no, I was wondering if you guys have done any temperature monitoring below Ball Mountain Dam. That was something that we were talking about a few months ago, and I wasn't sure if you had charts about how that looks. It's one of those between waters that seems like it's like drops to about 30 something feet, and I wasn't sure if it was providing a temperature benefit or causing it to get hotter below the Ball Mountain Dam. I know it was pretty hot in the stretches around Londonderry. You got a dam up there, I think, and then you're coming down through Ball Mountain and you have it working as run of river, but the flow drops. I noticed it came down to about 10 CFS, and then I wasn't sure if there's light stratification or what's going on. So I'm kind of interested if that data could be provided also.
I can ask Lael what she's got, and if they're monitoring below that, but DEC doesn't do that kind of temperature monitoring. We leave that to the fisheries guys.
Yeah, I know you are. I know.
Yeah, so I'll ask her if there's any information down below that, below Ball Mountain.
Gloria, did you have something?
I came on a couple of minutes late, and Marie, is your slide presentation available? Because I noticed none of our select board or conservation people commission from Newfane. we're on. So,
I can send it to Margot. There's also a story map on the Basin 11 web page, which is kind of, you know, an overall intro to the whole basin planning and watershed issues. So either way is an option. You can go to the story map on our website,
okay.
or you can, I'll turn this into a PDF and send it to Margot.
And I will also send to all registrants for this program the copy of the recording, so that you'll have both the PDF
Oh, okay.
and a copy of the recording. I know from some of the other basins that people shared the recording, and other, you know, members of various town committees were able to watch it. So either way.
Thanks.
Excellent.
So are there any other questions or comments, or, you know, hey, this is a really special area along the watershed and it's worth protecting, or
You'll
anything?
never tell me the good fishing spots, I know that.
Nope, thought it was a very, very good presentation, Marie. And I particularly enjoyed your highlighting of Adams Brook and the success story there.
It took us a long time, John.
Oh, jeepers.
Well,
Thank you, Marie. Thank you for putting so much energy into Rock River Science's favorite river. Thank you.
The rock is beautiful.
It's the greatest. We have to develop this as what it is, a national treasure, a world-class geological site.
I like that. ORW.
We'll get it there. We're getting there, right?
Definitely.
I hope so. Thank you.
All right, folks. Well, you can all go enjoy your evenings. Thank you again for helping me out here. You'll hear from me again in the springtime with a draft plan.